Hello, friends. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the And Also podcast. I am your host, Madison, and I am so excited. This is the first episode of season 2. Can you believe it? I feel like season 1 was just really a way for me to get to know what I wanted to talk about, find my interest, find my style. And now, girl, we got a lot in store for season 2. I am so excited for what this season is gonna bring to the table, okay? If you saw the closing of season 1, that last episode I have posted, I talked about having a guest host once a month on the show. So once a month, my girl Brittany Demarco-Furman will be here hosting the show alongside me. Now, why did I choose her? It's a whole rabbit hole, and we're going to get into that in today's episode. But Brittany is a licensed funeral director here in New York State, and she's also my funeral director mentor. So if you didn't know, I'm becoming a funeral director, and Brittany has taken me under her wing, and she has brought me to her family funeral home and has literally showed me the ropes of all things funeral. Like, I feel so prepared for mortuary science school because I get to experience the funeral home, and it's amazing. It has been the greatest thing that has happened to me in my life in a very long time. So you're gonna get to hear all about Brittany's career as a funeral director and kind of my experience becoming a funeral director. And we'll have an episode together once a month. So if you guys have any topics that you want us to go over, please, girl, let me know because we'll add it to the list. There's gonna be a lot of talk about grief, about death, about the funeral and death industry. So those are also questions that we are so open to taking. If you have any questions, we're here for it. All right, so before we get into today's episode, of course, we got to do our drink of the day. I already had caffeine today, literally didn't want to have more. So I was like, what am I going to drink? Like, literally, what am I going to drink without caffeine? Girl, I have no idea. Aura Bora. Never heard of it, never tried it. It's an herbal sparkling water. The flavor is lemongrass coconut. Flavored sparkling water with real lemongrass extract. Okay, girl, let's give it a try then, shall we? This is giving me a flashback to the early 2000s. The coconut lime hand sanitizer from Bath & Body Works. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? In the original packaging. Let's give this a try. I'm just going to give you a suggestion right now. Buy this, little pineapple juice, shot of Malibu, thank me later. This would make a great mixer. This is actually really good. Refreshing, light flavor, not too sweet. I gotta say, this is really good. Give it a try. Give it a try. All right, guys. So without further ado, let's introduce our monthly guest host, Brittany Demarco-Furman. And I hope you enjoy this episode. Oh, and before we get into it, make sure you click subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, give it a thumbs up. If you're listening on an audio platform, be sure to give the show a 5-star rating. It helps us out so much to reach the people that we want to reach to hear these stories. And download the show, add it to your playlist, send it to a friend, blah, blah, blah. You know the deal. Let's get into the episode. Welcome to the And Also podcast. I'm so happy to have you here because I've been wanting you on the show forever.
I know, like the first time we met,
I was like, get on the podcast.
Fast forward to today, we did so much more in between. So,
girl, literally, I mean, it's only been like,
I think I met you.
We met at
in April at the Best
Panzas
Dress.
thing.
I'm surprised I didn't scare you away with my attire, and also
no, but
my
your
runway.
outfit was one of my favorites because it was like it was all black, right?
Yeah, it was all black.
So I was like, she knows
right?
what's up.
I got in the theme. What were your first impressions of me when you found out I was a funeral director?
That's a really good question. Initially, I was like, oh, like I really want to talk to her and just like see what the vibe is and like what is even being a funeral director. Like at the time I had an idea, but I did not know the iceberg at all of like how much goes into literally one funeral. I was just like really interested. Like my idea of what a funeral director was not you. And I feel like that's something you have talked about a lot. Like, not every funeral director is just like an old white guy, like in a suit. We're actually like real people. And like, there's all different types of people. So I thought it was cool that like, oh, if I do like want to get into that industry, like there's somebody that I actually feel like would understand my experience. And then, yeah, so we briefly met at that event. Fast forward, we kind of talked on Instagram a little bit. And then you invited me to the
Grief experience,
like book panel thing. So do you want to talk a little bit about that before I explain?
Yes, so I'm a part of a collaborative book called The Grief Experience, Tools for Acceptance, Resilience. The book is on Amazon. It's also a bestseller right now, international as well, so it's very exciting. But I am just one chapter of 20 other authors, some that are local, and they each have a story to tell of their unique grief. Some people who lost their husbands, some people who lost even a pet too.
There's everything in that book.
Yes, or like, ambiguous grief.
Yeah.
You know, the thought of your life and then something altered and now you're grieving the life you thought you were going to have. So it's really deep and it's really raw. And my perspective is of a funeral director. You know, you just think this is a job. No, you're
in the trenches. Like you are in it.
And you've worked a few funerals. You see how these families interact with us and how we're left afterwards. Like you and I were sitting on the floor like in our own emotions during the service and kind of catching our breath because you create a bond and you create love. That building's full of love. No matter what people think, like cold, morbid funeral home, that is not the case. There is so much that comes out during a funeral.
There is so much. I mean, you will catch people crying one second and like laughing and like joking around the next.
It's healing together. That's why we have funerals.
And I wish that there was more of that experience after the funeral, you know? And I know that you are working on so many things to like try to create that, which is awesome.
Yeah, so that's part of the aftercare. You know, after the funeral, things get quiet, especially 2 weeks after. The sympathy cards are very thin. Voicemails, few to none. People are not coming around. Your Facebook feed is now people have moved on.
Yeah, it's just like get back to work. Like,
and that's where grief sets in. Yep. So if I can be a part of that aftercare and realizing that my job as a funeral director is to focus on mental health too afterwards.
Yes.
And this book, we have our story, but then the tools of what helped us with our grief and how to move forward. You know, you're never going to get rid of that grief, but you have to learn how to live with it.
Yeah, it's really important to focus on that. And I feel like there's a lot of funeral experiences that I've had personally for people I know that like it is just like, okay, get in the receiving line, say what you need to say to the person, and then move on and you're done. And then we just like don't talk about it ever again. Like it's just done. So yeah, that is so important. But to circle back again, the Grief Experience book.
Yep. And you're at the seminar. We were literally dancing.
Like, okay.
Release. And we thought it was so silly.
That was a wild experience.
We started crying and just like...
My tears were like literally falling out of my face. Like I could not, like I wasn't even like crying. I was just like...
I know. I was walking behind you and I was, you know, in my own realm, but then I felt your energy and I was like,
oh shit, she's really down bad right now.
And that's really when I got to learn about your story too, because obviously at the event prior, we weren't going to sit in the corner. Yeah, I was definitely more of an upbeat and, you know, the first time you meet somebody, you kind of have to feel vulnerable and open. And after that experience, I got to learn about you and really know that you're interested in my field too. So the conversation just kept going, and your mom and you actually came to one of my pre-planning events, which was really beautiful besides it being a 95-degree hot night.
Yeah, that was rough. It was so like muggy.
I know. But it was very empowering for me as a funeral director to pass on knowledge. I think if I was to have something to be known for is education, and that's a gift all on its own as a funeral director, besides the fact that you're there at somebody's most vulnerable time in their life and you create purpose.
Yes. There's a specific moment that I remember. So I was working a really big funeral with you, and when we got to the church and everyone was like settled in, like you and I just went outside and we both like started crying. Like it just felt like the entire day you're holding everything together to like be that strong person for the family. And then we were just like, oh my God, like just like let it all out. And that moment was like, I just feel like I bookmarked it in my head as like, this is really truly what I want to do. And like to know that we have that impact and that ability to be there for people, but we can also have those like vulnerable moments on the side, like when the time is right, is like really, really special. And it's something I think, you know, when people think about a funeral director, they're like, why would you want to do that? Like, I do not envy your job. Why would you want to work in this? Like, that's crazy. But it really is those small moments that you remember. It just pushes you to keep doing it.
Yeah. In a way, this career is addicting because you are transported to the human experience, the most raw human experience, which is loss and love. Thinking back on that service, it was live streamed. And, you know, as a funeral director, you want to make sure everything looked good because you rely on another company. So I did look at that video afterwards, and you and I were literally walking the family, like holding them to their seats, like, because they don't know what to do. So we're literally helping them take those
like
steps.
Mentally like considering any, like they're just so, you know, I've been there before, and it's you're not even thinking.
You're
like
in a
you
fog.
need somebody to like pick you up and say, this is how you walk forward right now. Like this is
some things that are as common as where do I sit, they need somebody to guide them and be like, so this is what's going to happen in this, and I'm going to be here after the service, I'll be right here again. So they have that light and they have that reliability because their life was just shattered and nothing makes sense anymore. So if you can be the one thing that makes sense and you could be that shoulder or that hand to guide them, it's the most purposeful field I think anybody could ever find.
It really is. And that's a huge reason for me why I am so drawn to it, because I feel like I've lived 1,000 lives and like done a million careers, and like it felt good for a time and then it just didn't. And I would just reach that point again of like, what is this really contributing? What does this really mean? Is this actually fulfilling my need to just like contribute to society?
Yeah.
And I don't know how much like beauty marketing was doing that. I don't know how much like, you know, editing podcasts is doing that. Like, yeah, it's fun. It makes me money. But like at the end of the day, I'm still looking for more. And I never feel that way after working a funeral.
No.
I'm just like, okay, I'm good. Like, I feel like I have done something today that impacted people, and I've done something today that contributed positively, and it really gives me purpose. And that's why I'm just like so like, I have to do this, because I feel like everyone looks for that. And I think a lot of times maybe we're looking in the wrong places. Death is just, it's part of everyone's life in some capacity. And like when you're thinking of having a meaningful career, like, there it is, you know? So.
And how old are you?
I'm 24. I'll be 25 in November.
That's what I thought.
Because it was the same exact experience.
It's the same experience for me.
Yeah.
I come from a family-owned funeral home. I'm the 4th generation. But at 17, 18 years old, when I'm graduating from high school, mom and dad were like, so are you going to take over the family business? Are you going to go into mortuary science? And I look at them, I'm like, huh? What?
Did you ever talk about it before then, like growing up?
You know, I had respect for my dad, as any teenager could have respect, but you really don't know. You don't know enough about life to know enough about death.
Oh,
you know, seeing my dad out there, I considered him the man in black, but I also had that respect because so many people loved him. So many people would
like
come
every time
up
you
to
go
him.
somewhere, you're like,
I'm
oh
like,
my
is that
God.
a distant cousin? How do we know them? Why are they kissing you on the cheek? And why are you embracing them for longer than you should to a stranger? And he would say, I buried their son. I buried her husband. And they become extended family.
Literally.
No, truly. And it was something I look back on, and I'm so proud of him. And I also know that I have that experience now, and it's such gratitude and value in my life. But yeah, when you're 17, 18 years old, like, you didn't even live. And I couldn't imagine in between school, working there and having to sit at the end of the table looking at families at all different ages and know what I'm talking about. I still am learning every day too. Like, I get stronger every year, every service. The learning never ends. But it took me some soul searching, going to college, traveling in Europe. I did the same thing, marketing, and I was creating ads on the subway down in New York City. And I was like, oh, this is a great deal. But like, no one else is looking around like it's a big deal. Like this lipstick
you see your
ad,
and you're like, oh my God.
a fitness marketing campaign. And it was fun and all, but I didn't know what my next move was. So when I was in between jobs, I came home, helped Dad out, and
you're like, shit.
It took literally a week to know that I was going to apply for mortuary science, and it's all because of one widow. He just wanted somebody to listen to him, and I was there, and he just talked and talked and talked. And I love when people do talk about the person that passed away, because sometimes you have to pull it out, but when it comes out, it must be so healing for them. Just listening, and I'm not the one making the itemization of what they want and talking about contracts or any of that, which is very minuscule when you think about the funeral directing.
Right.
It is a business, but we really do talk more about the life and more about the funeral experience than, the bottom line of anything. But my dad had to still have signatures, and he was kind of trying to show me some things, but I was more captivated by his storytelling. He talked about a white orchid, how his wife loved white orchids. I remember him discussing their wedding song, and so my dad had to step out to take another call, so I finished setting up, and what he didn't know is I purchased a white orchid and I put it on display next to the casket. So when the husband was walking, which was so sad because he was all by himself to walk to the casket, I'm the one who walked him there. And as he's walking, his wedding song was playing, and then he saw the white orchid, and I think it caught he had to catch his breath because
I would like break down crying.
He needed that before he saw her. Yeah. And it gave him this essence of her.
Yes.
And
just like a sense of peace too, like just bringing you right to that person.
So instead of sadness grief, it was love grief in that moment. And I just remember seeing his face and how grateful he was for me. And it just meant everything. So that's how I got into it.
Then you were stuck.
Yeah, I was like hook, line, sinker.
Yep. It's so much about the small things. Like when you think about the aftermath of losing someone, there's so much you forget, but the things you remember are just like those little moments where somebody made you feel seen.
Yeah.
And that's so huge, because I think a lot of times like people don't at all feel seen in their grief, especially in the society and culture we live in where it's not talked about and it's not acknowledged as much as it should be. It's really important to have somebody just be like, hey, you can talk about this, and like I see you, and I want to hear the stories, and I want to hear their favorite song and their favorite flower, and that's important to me just as much as it's important to you. And that's huge.
I think you've been at a few services where I kind of do like an open dialogue too, because not everybody has something prepared, nor do they want to. Public speaking all on its own is hard, but imagine with your grief and looking at people that you know. Sometimes they say it's easier to talk in front of a group of people that you don't know.
Absolutely.
But this is like everybody who knows you, and they all know, like,
it's so personal. It's so intimate and like vulnerable.
So in a way to just break the ice, to make everybody on even level ground, you use the words that they told you, and you find a way to create a conversation where you're kind of like openly asking, like, so who remembers Betsy in high school? Who was there for that? And then the people would raise to engage, and and then be like, all right, so her Corvette she loved, so who went for a ride in that? And then it creates like a conversation where everyone kind of feels like they're a part of it, and they don't feel like they're forced. Even if it's a hand, people look around, they're like, I remember that, that's right. And it just creates this open dialogue that's so healing.
It really is.
And I feel like that's the one thing that I could take as a professional, that I try to break the ice for those conversations, because we all start to grieve, and it's better to grieve together, that you don't feel alone, that everybody has their own wave of emotions that's going through their system, and you start there.
It's such an underrated thing,
because people don't want to talk about it. They're scared.
They don't.
And funeral directors have to be brave for them.
Yeah.
And there's some people that, like, you could read the room sometimes, like, you want to go by the book, what the religion was, and every person's different, which makes life so beautiful. So there's definitely some families where I'm going to be like, by the book, do what they say. Behind scenes, when it's just them, we can have our own little dialogue. But if they're very private and you could read the room,
it's a lot of reading the room.
It's a lot. Like, honestly, you have to be 3 steps ahead.
Yes, but you have to be hyper aware.
But it does make it interesting. I was never a person that wanted to just do clerical work and do what you're supposed to do. I feel people's emotions. Having that gift in a way, I want to help others. And I think part of of funeral directing, as many parts of our job is making sure that you can balance emotions and help people on their own way.
So I want to talk about like the school stuff and like me kind of getting into this and what made me just decide like I have to do this. Because I mean, going back to school is like, it's a lot. It's a big decision. And from what I now understand, and maybe you can fact check this.
Oh yes, please tell me all the details.
Apparently this is like a really, really hard program and I'm going to struggle really bad.
Is that how she opened it up?
So there were a lot of like past students who came in and spoke.
Okay.
And they were all like emphasizing like how you need to be studying like 24/7. It's going to be so hard. Like, but you can do it, but it's going to be really hard. You need to be prepared for like how difficult it is. And you have to retain like so much information. It just felt really overwhelming. And like, I feel like I'm a really good student. I love school. I've just never like had that sort of like, oh my God, am I like going to be able to do this?
Mm-hmm. No, it is not that difficult.
Okay.
It is just by textbook. So the thing is, you need to learn by the textbook.
Right. Because you got to pass that state board.
Yeah. So that's what's the most important part is the state boards. The studying is based on the answers that she teaches you from the study guide. She emphasizes a lot on those tests. So I think that's where a lot of the pressure comes because I know people have had trouble passing it, but it's just because they were studying wrong or they didn't follow the coordinator's guidelines. Like she wants you to come study with you because she knows that they're going to try tripping you out.
Right.
So it's interesting that's it. But also they should be there to scare you in a way because some of these people are coming in and they're like, this would be interesting, you know, like being in the morgue.
Like,
and,
oh, it's so cool.
You know, it's like anatomy, like the person, I mean, not to be so blunt, but the person's already dead, so I can't mess up when I'm trying to you know, learn more about the human, because people in a way are a little weird. I won't lie. There are some weirdos that enter this field, but I'm sure the class was interesting.
It was an interesting group of people.
And there's also people who never did what you're doing, shadowing a funeral home. They go to school for a year and a half, 2 years.
And they're like,
pass their boards, do everything, and they start a residency.
And that's their first time working.
And then they're like, what do you mean I'm on call? What do you mean I have to go to the nursing home by myself and pick up a body? What do you mean that I could be working till XYZ at night?
What do you mean I have to leave Christmas dinner to go pick somebody up?
Yeah. And also just like the ins and outs of some people don't want to work with the families and there's some people that don't want to work in the morgue.
And I think it's so interesting too because I feel like along the way, a lot of people have kind of tried to like reality check me of like, are you sure you want to do this? And I've appreciated that so much because I don't want to be blindsided. I don't want to like go through all the school, go through everything to then be like, actually, I don't want to do this. You know, like I appreciate the scare tactic, if you will, because these are things that are really important to know when you're going into a career. Like it just is.
Yeah.
And it's not a career that's like easy. It's not a career that you get to clock out at 5 p.m. and go home and not think about work until the next day. Like there's a lot. And I definitely feel like people were a little bit looking around like, oh. And then as soon as the chair of the department, she mentioned like, oh, we're going to tour the embalming room.
I remember it.
I could feel the energy in the room.
Change.
Like, and the girl next to me, she was like, have you ever seen a dead body before?
It is, you know.
I felt bad. I was like, yeah, have you? And she was like, no. Like, are we doing that today? Like, I don't know if I'm ready. And I'm like, I'm just here with you. Like, I don't know. But I felt really bad because I feel like people, you know, they think about the idea. But then when it comes time to be like, okay, here's a dead body, they are like, holy shit, like this is real.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny that people kind of forget that this is a profession. They just think like the magical fairy comes and takes the body away.
Like people don't think about what happens at all.
Yeah. Some people think it's like the EMS or they think there's like coroners that work for like CSI that do all this stuff. No, it's us, unless it's like under investigation where there was like, I mean, not to get gruesome, but there's been the railroad tracks or, you know, murder, suicide, or people just die at 30 years old. Like they still need to go and they need to go get an autopsy. that's when the coroner who's voted in, you have to nominate and elect your coroner in your county. They would go and pick up the body and transfer to the autopsy at the medical examiner's office. But everything else is us. Everything else is us at a home.
If it's not
hospice,
suspicious,
yeah.
we're there.
If the doctor's signing off, they're like, yeah, he smoked for 30 years. This makes sense at 50.
It's obvious. Yeah.
So, and then we're there, and most of the time we're there meeting the grieving family.
It's like it's right there. Yeah. It's right there. And I don't really know what people think mortuary science school is. Like, I don't know.
And getting to something that's so intense, like,
it's monumental for people. Like,
unless they have had like a death in the family and they've seen like how the funeral director cared for the family and they were inspired by them. But then there's some reasons we don't understand why people are getting into it, which is great because like I'm trying to promote, I want more people to get into this business, but I also want people to know this is the last standing professions that you really have to be a professional for. You can have your moments of personality and a way to vibe with the family, but you're also the person who has to be formal because funerals are formal. They're a way of a rite of passage. And you can't just be coming in and making it like it's no big deal. It is a huge deal. Even a bigger deal than a baby coming into life sometimes, because no matter how many years the person lived on this earth, they have a story to tell. I always make the comparison to weddings. How much weddings are and how much time gets put into a wedding, all these little details. People plan their weddings a year, sometimes 3 years prior. And then the day happens one day and it's celebrating love. Funerals, on the contrary, they're celebrating an entire life. And we do it sometimes 2 to 3 days.
Even now, like I already have a playlist for my funeral that I update all the time. Like I'm prepared. If I were to die tomorrow, like I've got it figured out. And there's like so much peace in that. And I feel like people should be thinking about their death more. And I think, talking about being like 17, 18, like fresh out of high school, I could not do this job at that age. I thought I knew everything. I was like, yeah, I got it figured out. If I were to have gone into mortuary science right after high school, we wouldn't be talking today. Like it would have.
You needed to experience life.
Exactly. Like it would have steered me so far away from ever wanting to deal with it. So I just think like the life experiences I've had are the reason I want to do it. And the reason that I'm able to like clock into the mindset of being able to do it. And I'm really curious to see like how many people drop out.
Oh, it's very interesting. Yeah, I was in it for the long haul, and the director, I was like, you got to get me through this. Like, I'm not messing around. Like, sign me up for the first board. And she's like, are you ready? I'm like, I'm ready. And like, she wants the best for you and the best results for the organization. But I just was like, there's nothing stopping me, because at that time, I think it was 26 when I started taking the boards, and I was like, this is like, I want to move forward and take over the family business, and they need me too. Like you met my other associate. My dad was like on his way out, and Mike was running the whole show. Like they needed that other license. So it's time consuming, but you need that education. You need that foundation, which we'll talk. I'll bring some books and we'll look over some stuff. We'll do some study material. It's all about on the job training. Let me tell you, that real life experience.
Yeah. Maybe that's why I was wondering, like, is this really going to be that hard? Because
it'll come natural once you're in it, though. You'll come natural once you're in it. Because it's not like we're doing math.
Right.
It's not like we're
doing... there's a couple hard classes I have to pass, but, like, I know how to pass a class. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I'll be okay. And I was talking to the head of the department at the end of the orientation, and she says hi to everyone at Glenville Funeral Home.
Oh. We love her. She has such a... Like, you wouldn't even expect that she's a director.
I didn't expect her to like look
She's
like that.
Cool.
Like,
She's cool.
I was kind of surprised.
Yeah.
But she was asking.
She's got some tattoos. She rides the motorcycles. Like she lives life large and loud, and she lives life to the fullest, which a lot of funeral directors do. Yeah. Every funeral director I meet is a wonderful person that sees the world differently, because they know time is fleeting and they know that they're in a purposeful place in their life where they're creating value every single day. And it's not about the money, too. It's all about the soul. And, that might sound cliche or a little cheesy, but every funeral that ends, you feel this I don't know how to describe it. This light.
It's a feeling that you can't really like compare to much else, to be honest. It's a really good feeling, and there's so much to learn, and a lot of it is like, yeah, I'll get the basics in school and like the terminology, blah blah blah, but like the learning happens, like I said, boots on the ground. Like you gotta be in it, and
like there's a formula for embalming. Don't even ask me what it is, because we don't even follow it. Like you see the body, you analyze it. So that's part of the embalming process, is you do an embalming report. Like you want to like see what the body is. Like they have edema, like you could tell that they're like bloated, or
like every
they're
body
dehydrated.
Is so different. So
like what you have to put in is like, it's like hocus pocus, like it's right into the machine. And of course, like any profession, when you first start, you go by the books, but then it just becomes fluid, and
you start to see things that like you might not have seen in the book, you know.
And then you remember what didn't go right the last time that took you an hour to fix.
I'm so scared of like screwing up. Like
Mike will tell you there's really no way, because there are some ways, like if you put more dye in it or something, or say you didn't embalm enough, but then, you know, there's ways to conceal or, you know, go back and preserve even more. But then there's also things you could do with makeup that people don't even realize, the power of makeup and lighting. Lighting is so key. Like obviously we need a ring light today. So
yeah, I mean even the color that somebody is wearing. Like, make color them look more dead.
Oh no, seriously, like it's crazy whenever they want to have, families want to have an open casket in church. We were like, that's the church that has that natural light. Guess we're gonna be putting on this shade, and like
you gotta really think about everything. Like,
and then when we place the casket, remember last time the sun was too bright there?
Like, go ahead and
it's all aesthetics too.
Yeah, it's like, do you want a warm tone red lipstick? Do you want a cool tone red lipstick? Like, there's so much.
Yeah,
there's so much.
Yeah, but in regards to lipsticks, you know, that's a whole other conversation we have with the families. Like, and we want to make sure we're doing their hair and makeup like them. So if you want to bring their snob MAC.
Stop.
Yes. No, believe me. Because I used to wear that too. Like the bright pink.
Yeah, but
you want to bring the MAC Snob lipstick, and we're going to use her lipstick, then let's go for it. But it's the family's choice at the end if they want a specific time frame too. Because everybody has different looks throughout their eras of life. So
yes, that's so true.
But it's very important. When you see your loved one for the first time, it's going to make or break how you grieve, and you want a trusted mortician. Nothing's worse than somebody who says, like, we had to close the casket. I'll tell you honestly, it doesn't happen at Glenville Funeral Home. First, because we have Mike Mason as the embalmer, and also, you know, tops here all our cosmetics, and we take the time. We're a family-owned funeral home. We're not corporation. That's an assembly line. We take our time with every family member, and we don't push our work. You gotta take the time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have such a journey in front of us, and
yes,
I know, and also it's going to be a wonderful platform to bring my knowledge, my experience, but then both of us are personalities. You're my Gen Zer, and I'm your millennial. I like to call Big Sis.
The resident millennial.
Right? And we're going to have an interesting journey, and how we thread together, and how I help you and how you help me. You know, I'm starting my own brand, Buried in Conversation, which obviously as a funeral director and a mom, it's hard to find the time. So this is going to be a great outlet for me to share.
Yeah.
But I'm just so excited to finally, like, everything that I've dreamed and wanted my brand to be, you're it. Like, I'm trying to inspire the next generation. I'm trying to educate. And the best part is I have you now. And with that, I have your official...
Oh my God. She's
name
official
tag at Glenville Funeral Home.
Let's go. This is amazing. Thank you.
So you wear it on your suit jacket, or any of your fabulous outfits that you wear. You already inspired me to buy these.
Oh my God. The little pepper steppers.
I know.
I love them too. I have them in like non-patent leather, but they're literally the same. Just like,
I know, I copied you. Definitely.
I'm
We're going to have to talk about what to wear to a funeral, because let me tell you, people are wearing
you could do a
jeans.
lookbook.
Seriously. I'm like, do I need to like tag like things on my Amazon shop?
I think that we should totally do that.
Yeah,
like seriously. A full list of like
Yeah,
what not to
we're
wear.
Going to be going on field trips. We are going to maybe bring in some specials with other professionals.
We got to get Katie Manning Hilton in the house.
Yes.
We got to get her here.
She's something else. She also has to come and sage our building. We always like to have a little bit of healing ritual every year. So, yeah, we're going to have a lot going on at the funeral home, and every day is different. So buckle up, girl.
There is so much, but I am so glad that I don't have to do it alone. I'm really glad to not have to do this alone, because I feel like if I didn't know you, if I didn't have the experience, like just being at the funeral home, like I would be really stressed out. And like to not have someone to just like bounce questions off of, that's a scary thought. Like I'm just glad that you've been so like open arms, like let's do this. And I'm really grateful, and I'm so excited for the future.
I'm so excited for you. You're going to be fantastic, and the world needs you.
Aw, thank you. So what can viewers expect next month from you? Do we have any ideas? Like, what do we
like
thinking?
I said, like we can do anything from the funeral planning process, maybe even go to some of our vendors and talk with them.
Yes.
I can just bring some books and we can talk about mortuary law. There's so much to discuss.
So much.
I mean, even experiences that I've gone through or what you go through this process, of course, without any names, but even like the comical things that just makes you feel human, and, you know, how it shapes you and I as a person through this journey. So it's going to be,
there's a lot in store.
It's going to be fun, and it's also going to be very purposeful.
Yes.
And serious, but also life is a journey. So the ups and downs, there's a lot to be said.
There is. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm so excited for literally everything that we have planned, and let everyone know where they can find you.
Hi, I'm Brittany Demarco-Furman.
By the way,
I'm Brittany Demarco-Furman. I'm a licensed funeral director at my family firm, Glenville Funeral Home. We serve the whole Capital Region. It's a beautiful place, and I'm so grateful to be taking over the family business. And I'm also starting a brand called Buried in Conversation, which is on Instagram, and it's kind of like a blog, and it's to create inspiration, but also share the knowledge of my profession. I also have the Grief Experience book, which you can find on Amazon. I'm one of the authors, and you can find me as the author Brittany Demarco-Furman on Amazon.
All right. We'll have everything linked below as well, so definitely check her out. And yeah, thank you again for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. To be continued.
Yes.
Yay.
The takeover from The Undertaker.
The Undertaker. I'll be back.
Well. We have come to the end of the first episode of season 2. I am so thankful that you guys tuned in today's episode. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope you're looking forward to what season 2 has in store. I cannot wait to share with you all of the amazing guests and conversations we have coming up. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to click the subscribe button and give the video a thumbs up, and of course, leave us a comment of what you want to see in the future. And if you're listening on any streaming platform, be sure to give the show a 5-star rating, add it to your playlist, and send it to a friend. All right, guys, I will see you in the next episode with a guest, and I'm so excited to share with you what's next. All right, have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you very soon. Bye.